Welcome to Ohio VolleyTalk. It is Sunday, March 12th. Alongside me here, Haas, and I'm Elliot Scully. Joining us today, the third season of his head coaching career of the number 3 ranked St. Ignatius Wildcats, Coach Dominick Adornato, or Coach Dom. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing well. Pleasure having me on the podcast.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So, you had, in your 2 seasons prior to this one, you've had 2 state tournament finishes. In your first year, you lost to Elder in the semifinals. Last season, Centerville in the quarterfinals. And the last season, the regional final before that was really kind of a blowout.
And set number 1 goes to the Wildcats as well, as they take it by a final count of 25-8.
You were the 2 seed. 1 seed was Hudson. St. Edward chose to go after them, and then Hudson won in a 5-setter. So why was that regional final so lopsided? Is that just there were only really 3 really good teams in the North, or how did that work?
So last year, I think a lot of people were really close. So last year we didn't play a lot of regional games, even though in a head-to-head match we did beat Hudson. But I just feel like teams decided who they wanted to go after in the regionals. It was kind of top heavy. And just based on the seeding, the number 3 seed Eds and the number 4 seed Jackson both decided to go after Hudson rather than us at Ignatius. So I think that's just like a testament who wanted to play who and stuff like that.
You beat St. Ed's right at the end of the regular season too, so I'm sure that influenced that.
Yeah, so when we played Eds at home early in the year, we actually had some injuries, and they beat us in 4. And then when Hudson beat us last year, they beat us in 3, but I was missed. We also were hurt that game too. It was on back-to-back nights. They got hurt in the Hudson match. Then we played Hudson in a try with Mount Vernon the day after. So it was kind of like hard 24 hours with 3 starters being injured, but head-to-head, we beat Eds in 3, and then we beat Hudson at Hudson in 4, fully healthy. So, but right now it's all about this year, right? You know, the past is the past.
Definitely.
Yep, for sure. Just looking at state, you guys played Centerville, lost that one in 4 sets, and you guys are trying to get back to the state tournament. Both of us picked you guys to win the region this season. How does your past success drive this team?
So in general, when I was a player at Ignatius, the North was always kind of like the easy way out. Whoever made it probably get lost first round. So when I got hired to coach my alma mater, I was like, I want to change that. Not only not be the region that everyone wants to play at states, but in essence, help the region improve with new techniques and experience as myself as a player bringing to coaching. And my first year, we really embodied that with the new culture, beating Olentangy Liberty in the first round and giving Elder a really good battle. I feel like it was really close for that match. And last year, we were really young with mostly juniors and sophomores, but these guys were on that state title team on my first year. And last year, winning the Jesuit Cup, being a top seed Xavier, beating Centerville at Lee Day as well as Northmont, and beating Mount Vernon at Mount Vernon last year. We had a lot of very big wins last year where they grew up, and now this year they're taking all that experience to, I think the North is the toughest it's ever been. So taking that experience not only in our own region, but to other regions as well.
Yeah, you've had some really, really impressive wins this past season. But Friday night, you had your first match of the season against Archbishop Hoban. And you sent me a text before that, and you're like, hey, just, man, starting setters out, it's a really tough team. And I was like, man, he's already working me for the rankings. But, yeah, all jokes aside, though, it is important, obviously, when you're starting setters out. But I thought you guys played extremely well, especially with that caveat. It was 25-18, 25-20, 25-7. Really turned it on in that third set.
Tipped. That's 4 touches. The Cats have won the first game of the season.
Incredible.
3-0.
Despite, the obvious hurdle of not having your setter, what went right for this team?
Well, we really at Ignatius and what I've Germany culture, it's all about team unity and team building. Win as a team, lose as a team, in all facets of the game that we can control. So to put some numbers, we served about a 203 in the match. So anything usually above 1.8 is usually pretty good. 2 is you're doing really well. Our serve receive, we passed a 2.2, so we were handling Hobins, tough flow, full serves and tops. So when we did have some struggles, we were able to maintain that. And as a team, we hit about a 476 with 33 kills on 8 airs, led by our outsides. So Jack Reagan, freshman outside, and Sam Brown, senior outside, both had only 4 airs on swings, and they contributed 22 kills. So that was a big testament to the offense. And whether we guys have injuries or not, or have to take some time away, as you know, in the volleyball season, stuff could happen. We're all students are like
Of course,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's that next man up mentality, and we're very lucky to have a very deep team where we can plug anyone in and still have a chance to win. I feel like.
Would you say that statistics are a big part of your team? Or how
Um,
you make coaching decisions?
I use data, but in the middle of the game, it's all about feeling and who's on, who's off. But I feel like if you use everything, it's only helpful. So yes, we use analytics, statistics. Some guys just have an off serving night, might decide to switch up the lineup or switch up when they're ordering in the system. I like to use everything because if you always start in the same spot, you get really predictable. And that's the one thing I don't want Ignatius to be. And that's what's helped our recent success, I feel like, in the last few years. And I like to continue that.
For sure. You talked about some of the freshmen. You have a different makeup for your team, at least from what I've seen from other schools. Of course, I have a GCL background, but looking at your team, you have 2 freshmen, 5 juniors, and 2 seniors. Talk to me about your 2 freshmen, Jack Reagan and Andrew Broby. Of course, Broby coming into play center with your starting setter out, and then Reagan being outside. Just talk to me about those 2 guys and their performances so far.
So I feel like Andrew Broby did a really good job stepping in. I don't know how long our setter will be out. It's a lot of concern. To be honest, he might be out the whole year. We'll see. But basically, he stepped in great. He practiced about a week. Handled the lineup really well. I think he set a very nice offense. Made some great decisions. And Jack Reagan, you can't teach some height and everything. I think he stepped up really good as the other OH. On 21 attempts, he had 12 kills, 2 airs, and he passed a 2-2 on serve receive. And Broby stepped in; he had 13 assists with his three hitters. So just the youngness of them, really focusing on that, able to step into their first varsity match and perform at a high level will only do wonders throughout the year as they gain confidence.
Well, I was going to ask how this offense might look different with the starting setter, but are you already in the mindset of let's just assume he's out for the season and see where it goes from there?
Yeah, I'm assuming there is some injuries and some family concerns with it. Don't want to get too much in detail with it,
Yeah,
but
of course.
the lineup will always change what's best of the team and the group and everything. So as a coach, I always want to be prepared for anything. So, but I feel like any lineup we put out there, I wouldn't root against us getting a fight chance against anybody.
Sure. All right. So you guys are not currently in a league right now. It's a big thing for a lot of teams to have same opponents they play every year. How do you work around that when you're making a schedule?
So I always want to schedule the toughest as possible. That's what I've learned when I played at Ignatius and play in college. The toughest schedule will always get you ready for the tougher matchups. So when I look at the schedule, there's always a certain amount of teams I play within region for rivals such as St. Ed's, I always want to get Hudson on the schedule, usually for at least one match, Jackson, and so on. So I will schedule a certain amount of games in region, but we always travel. So we're always at Elite Eight. I think that's the best tournament that you can go to. If you're invited, you better say yes to stay in the rotation. We've been going to Elite Eight as long as I can remember. And I always do at least one or two other tournaments or quads. So this year I was able to schedule a quad at Mount Vernon. I have a really good relationship with that coach where we're going to play at Mount Vernon, Olentangy, who's now D1, and Beaver Creek. So it's a nice quad there. And this upcoming Saturday, March 18th, we're playing Liberty, Berlin, and Xavier, which I already know will be a quad that everyone wants to watch and be there for. So
I'll be there.
Yeah, I always want to get scheduled tough. I always want to see everyone in the other regions as well, because if you're able to travel, I only think that helps your squad.
The upcoming Berlin quad, you also have Medina on the road on Tuesday. Just looking at those opponents, are there any game plans for what you're going to expect for Medina on Tuesday and then the opponents on Saturday? And how does this early competition aid the team later on in the season?
So for Medina, they're a really young team, but they're really scrappy. So the main thing with Medina, the game plan is just continue to control the serve and continue to gain experience of some of the younger guys. I am lucky that I have about five seniors and like four juniors. But for those freshmen, those juniors who haven't started before, these early tests are super important as when we get throughout the schedule. So Medina, first away game, get used to travel, have a good practice the rest of the week. And then with Berlin and Liberty and Xavier, it's really just seeing where we are, what we need to work on, because then right after that match, my thought process was, hey, we're going to have a tough quad, see what happens, and then how we respond against a big rival like Eds. So just getting that mentality of getting experience as we go through the schedule. So if you look at our schedule, there's challenges throughout where there's not a lot of, let's just say, gimmies, but it's consistent. Like, okay, this might be a little tougher for us than this one, but it's that constant like state and regional mode of mental toughness that I think separates us from a lot of teams. We can be down by 4 or 5 points, and against Hoban, the second set we were down by like 3 or 4 points, but you never felt that we were not going to come back and win that set, no matter how young or old they were. And that's the main culture that I wanted to change and continue to change. And I do a testament to my guys with that. They really do a great job at that, believing that they can win every single point. And until the whistle blows, it's anyone's game.
Yeah, definitely you've been doing a great job with that so far. Now, this early in the season, are you able to make any specific game planning around specific players on different teams, or is it all pretty general so far?
There's always some specifics against some guys that have been playing a while, but everyone develops. How you see a guy last year is not always going to be the same for this year, for better or worse. So I will say this: I got a list of coaches and game plans and stuff throughout the year already that I always update and stuff like that. And I know a lot of the other coaches, for the top programs do the same, I'm sure. But just, I update and see. But to be honest, any game playing before the game could change in an instant, depending on how the flow of the match goes. And you got to be able to make those quick decisions, which is kind of like my testament. And that's one of the main reasons we won a lot of games last year, where we were potentially outmatched in the first set, lost first set, or struggled a quick lineup change or rotation change. And basically see how other teams adapted, and majority didn't adapt very well. So it's that versatility that I think separates us.
Yeah, for sure. Just to close out here, you talked about the Jesuit Cup win last year. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so the Jesuit Cup is something that happens every year with all the Jesuit schools in Ohio. So in the past years, it's always been Walsh Jesuit, St. Xavier, and St. Ignatius. We all meet up on a Saturday and we all play each other. And whoever beats everybody, top wins, gets the Jesuit Cup champs. The past few years, it's been Walsh and Xavier. We've always been either second or potentially third. So last year was the first year we've ever won it, beating a fully healthy Xavier team in 4 and being a Walsh Jesuit team in 3 at Walsh was really a testament of the guys' growth. And yeah, it's just basically all the Jesuit schools getting together and playing each other and seeing who has the best record at the end of the day.
And are you guys doing that this year again or no?
We are not. So what we decided, just because of the games change, we go from 24 to 22 and scheduling, we're all going to just play each other individually. And then at the end, basically head-to-head neutral, just seeing what happens, and we can figure out that. So I'm playing Xavier at minimum at Berlin. I think Walsh has them on the schedule some other time, and then I'm playing Walsh individually at the end of the year. So we might figure out something out, but just because of circumstances and scheduling, we weren't be able to find a Saturday. The main reason is because how Easter and spring break worked out for all our schools.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Coach, thanks so much for coming on. Really looking forward to seeing how the St. Ignatius Wildcats do this season. You guys have had a great start so far.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think you two are doing a great job with this podcast. I think it's really cool, and I appreciate being on.
All right, that was Coach Dom. Thanks to him again for coming on. Had great lineup of guests so far, Coach Meyer and Coach Dom, and got a great lineup of guests coming up. And we appreciate all the support on that first episode. It's really great, and it's exactly what we wanted, just to kind of have us be the guys getting all the information and giving it to you in a digestible way. We were both busy this Friday, first day of matches. I remember I saw your tweet about I'm watching the Elder match and St. Ignatius match.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm doing the same thing. So that was great. It was like March Madness feels like, because we were all like, oh, what was the score there? Who's going on over here? It was great. We got a lot of good matches going on. Unfortunately, we are filming this a little bit early in the week, so we've only had Friday and Saturday to go off of. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the rankings. They're always going to be lagging a bit behind when they actually go up. But nevertheless, I think we've got some good information here to start off. So first of all, St. Edward, and that was probably the biggest shocker. St. Edward was upset by Stowe Monroe Falls in a sweep. The bigger problem was it wasn't even I don't know, you might disagree with me. I would say that I wasn't so much impressed by Stowe as I was disappointed by St. Ed's. It just not a lot of offensive production and a lot of errors. Through 2 sets, only 2 players were recorded a kill. Through the match, only 3 players recorded a kill. Estevez, it's possible he was injured. He definitely didn't have a big injury during the match. So he was either injured or benched for set 3. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the third set, St. Ed started to be a little bit more competitive, but I think it just goes back to the point where they just seem lackadaisical at times against a Stowe side that historically has not been that good. I mean, in the past few years, they've only had 1 season where they've been above 500. Again, for the most part in the past few years, especially before COVID, they've been a doormat, especially in the Northeast region. And I think for me, for St. Edwards is just trying to find some balance. And I think they were trying to find that later on, but I think especially when it mattered, where they had a chance to close out the set many times, it was at a set point. They just couldn't do it. And then the one time that Stowe was able to get it, they got the set and thus the match, winning that third set 31-29.
Yeah, real shocker there. I mean, I had him number 5 in my state rankings.
Yeah.
They're not number 5 anymore. Also, that in that match, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a moment where the referee looked at it. Was I think it was set 3, which was a little odd that it took him that long to catch it. But just new OHSAA regulations, which wasn't under the OHSBVA, that you can't wear chains or other jewelry in a match. So he said, "Hey, you 5 players on the St. Ed's side, you need to all go take your chains off." So they all left. It's funny.
Looks like the main ref wants to talk to Hutton about something. Drury. All those have to come out. 3 players. Hutton, Monette. Make it 4. Gallin. Matt Bloom will have to take off. Looks like chains they have on.
Elder also started off their season. They beat Archbishop McNicholas in 3. I'm interested to hear, what were your thoughts on that match?
Yeah, it was interesting just seeing Elder playing in that game. Credit to McNick. They're still a great D2 side, and I think if they put the right pieces together, they could end up getting the Southwest region in D2. But I think it's similar to what you said about St. Ed's and their disappointment. I think it was a little bit disappointing in Elder just knowing the type of standard they set last year. I think if you have a front line, and don't get me wrong, when you have Drew Mounty, Joe Bianco, and Will Buskin in your front line, that means trouble. That is the best front line that we're going to see for a very long time. That being said, this is still Elder, and Sean Tierney is still the head coach, as he's been for the past 20 years or so. There's still a standard that is there on this Elder side to try to get something going. And I think especially towards the end of that third set where Elder's just trying to close it out and they're not getting anything through, where I think they could have ended up winning that third set by the score of 25-17 or 25-18. Ended up being pretty close as they only won by a few points. And I think for Elder in general, I know for some of us, especially you and I, when we look at Elder and the type of standard they set, it is going to be disappointing, for almost from going from men to boys because of just how that team played last year. But you also have to understand, this is still a pretty good Elder side. Give them some time. I want to see how they do in GCL play against St. X and Moeller to see if they still have, let's say, they still have a fight in trying to win the GCL.
Yeah, definitely. And, like you said last episode, historically, the state tournament runs through the GCL South. Whoever's coming out of the GCL South probably has the best shot at winning a state championship. But honestly, after watching that match last night, I can't in good conscience keep Elder in my top 10. The front line you referenced with Mounty, Buskin, and Bianco, that was last year's team. Really great team last year. I mean, historically great, all-time great. So it's unfair to set it to that standard, but I mean, I know there are teams I left out of my top 10 last week that could probably beat Elder right now. So with that in mind, I can't keep them in there, which again, it's tough to think about because, big 3 is Moeller, X, and Elder. Historically, the 3 probably greatest programs in volleyball, but yeah, I can't do it. Set scores 25-15, 25-22, 25-21. I don't know. I think I'd like to see their middles be a little faster getting out to the block. I thought their defense is good. They brought back Dylan Samuels. That's an interesting story. We'll have Sean Tierney on next week. I'd like to hear about him because Dylan Samuels was their starting libero in the 2021 match. He played for him in the state championship match. Did not play in the 2022 season, and he's back now. So I had thought that he was done, but he is back. So that's good for them. Definitely, he's a great libero. I think they've got Bradley Lanter is injured right now, if I recall. I think I saw that. I don't believe he played, and I
don't think he did.
I saw in the interview they posted that he's dealing with an ankle injury. So they've got Fred Harvey's their main guy on the outside, and he's a solid outside, but he's not the kind of outside who can carry you. Like, he's not, a Jonah Gilbert or something, a guy who can just set every time and expect to kill. So yeah, I'm worried about the Cellar team. And like you said, we got a great staff over there. They've got a high standard for play, and it's very possible they can come back in the top 10. But this week, I can't put them in there. Darby also swept Mount Vernon, which, texting with Chad Sybrett, the coach of Mount Vernon, their starting setter was out. So take from that what you will. But it's really impressive by Darby because Mount Vernon did have Parker Gant. They have Zach Carnes in the middle, some great players. And Darby took care of business there in a away game in their first match of the season. So that was impressive. And then Mount Vernon turned on the next day and had the quad with Moeller, St. Vincent, St. Mary, and St. Charles. Did you have any big takeaways from that one?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just the fact that how Mount Vernon changed in that time where you do have your starting center back. Sure, they lost in 3 sets to Moeller, but all of those very close sets. And you beat St. Vincent St. Mary's, that too a favorite to potentially win D2 in 4 sets. I think that's a pretty convincing argument for me. Now, I don't have Mount Vernon in my top 10 this week, but I think if they can be a little more consistent, especially knowing what we saw this past weekend, I think they're going to be in the top 10 soon enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you said, they did have their starting center back for that Moeller quad. They played Moeller first. They lost in a sweep, but the set scores were 25-23, 25-21, 25-23. So it's not like, maybe if it was like 23-15, 16 or something like that, it'd be like, okay, it's probably just, first set jitters or whatever. But that's not a fluke. It's tough to play teams like Moeller that tough. So credit to them. Now, if you've never been to Mount Vernon's facility, it is a little bit different than regular courts because it's basically a big indoor track, and in the middle of the track there are 4 volleyball courts or something like that. But the material of the floor isn't the same as like a basketball court. It's more like a track, so it's a little grippier. It's a little tough to play on. So maybe that's take from that what you will. Mount Vernon probably has a little more of a home court advantage than any other team, but it's still very impressive that they were able to play Moeller that well. And like you said, beat St. Vincent St. Mary. All right, a little editor's note here. Because we're filming episodes at different times during the week, working around coaches' schedules, what we decided was the rankings we're talking about during the episode are going to be where our heads are at the time we're filming. So with the context of the matches we already have. And then the rankings that are released Friday on Instagram and Twitter are the official ones. Those are probably going to be different than the ones in the episode. And we will take into account the matches that happen in between filming the episode and posting the rankings. So just to recap, the rankings talking about the episodes, not official, just where our heads are at. The rankings on Instagram and Twitter every Friday are the official weekly stat rankings from OVT. Here are our D1 rankings for this week. First 4, we've got pretty lock and step there. Both have Moeller at number 1, X at 2, Ignatius 3, Old Tangy Liberty at 4. Archbishop Moeller played in the Mount Vernon quad. We talked about their sweep in Mount Vernon. They swept St. Vincent St. Mary as well. In their final match of the day, they went to 4 with St. Charles, which I don't really know why that happened. I'm going to guess that it was quad match fatigue. Maybe they're playing backups. I'm not going to count it against them, I don't think. At least not now. We'll see if it becomes a pattern. St. X, actually, they have not played a match yet. Well, that's not surprising, but they won't play their first match until the Berlin quad, which is next Saturday, March 18th, which is, first day match is March 10th, which is over a week before you play your first match. So, yeah, I wonder what the strategy is there. It's definitely probably not what I would do, but it's an interesting decision. That Berlin quad is going to be pretty big, though. St. X, Liberty, Berlin, and Ignatius. That'll be big. I'll get to be there in person. Talk about that. I'll see Coach Dom.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one team that's being under the microscope in this upcoming week, it's St. X right away. Because as we said before, you've got the Berlin quad, you're playing number 3, Ignatius, number 4, Olentangy Liberty. You have Berlin at number 10. But after that, you've got Moeller at home at the Burning Gym on Tuesday. And then after that, you've got Elder as well. And I've talked to Coach Ferris last year about this, and he's very adamant about starting the year off with a challenging schedule, making sure the guys are ready for action. Last year, he had Elder, Walnut Hills, and then Moeller on the road to start off the year. The Bombers went 2-1 in that entire stretch, and that one loss to Walnut Hills was mainly because the team didn't practice that weekend. So I think for St. X in general, you have another type of hard-hitting schedule, and especially I think for that Berlin quad, this is going to be the toughest quad they've played in a while, especially to start off the year. So I think for St. X, definitely under the microscope. Looking down the list, I had a little trouble in 5 or 6, and I think just knowing off Elder's history and just knowing how they've played in their program stature and mentality, I still have to put them in the top 10. And I think Darby, fresh off a win against Mount Vernon, especially at a Mount Vernon side that, as you said earlier, the Yellow Jackets have a pretty good advantage there. I think Darby's deservingly has to be in the top 10. LaSalle, great 3-set win at home against Lakota West. Darian McDowell got his first ever win as head coach. Congrats to him. And then again, I think the bigger question for me is just the amount of honorable mentions. And I think the reason why Centerville and Walnut Hills are still in the top 10 this week is the fact that I think they still have the stature and they still have the play from what we saw last year. And I think a lot of those key pieces are coming back this year. If you're wondering who my honorable mentions are, Mount Vernon's on the list, as I said earlier. I think Stowe deservingly has to be put on there, especially after beating St. Ed's on the road in 3 sets as well. So again, my rankings will be changing from week to week for sure.
Yeah, I mean this is early season volleyball for you, right? I mean, top 4 we have pretty locked in, and then after that it's kind of a toss up. I would say for me, because Mount Vernon didn't have their setter when the loss to Derby, I'd probably put Derby at like 11, if we extended it that far. But I'm more concerned with when Mount Vernon was at full strength. They played Archbishop Moeller in such a way that, like, if a few points had gone their way, we could be looking at a 5-setter or a win for Mount Vernon. To me, that's very impressive. So we'll see. They'll play Olentangy Liberty this week, number 5 versus number 4. That'll be big. I'm really excited to see how good Liberty and Ignatius and Xavier and Berlin too, how good they all are in comparison to each other, because we know they're all good. They probably all have a legitimate shot at a state championship, but who's the best? That'll be the key there. And outside of the Centerville Elite 8, I think this is going to be the single most telling event probably of the season. Honestly, I might walk out of there looking at the team who went 0-3 and say, yeah, they're still in it. Like it might be that kind of day. Because if you have 3 competitive losses, in my mind, a loss like Mount Vernon had, where you have a sweep, but it's 23, 21, 23, that's not really a loss. I mean, I think you call it a moral victory. Like in terms of rankings, that doesn't tell me that. All that tells me is Mount Vernon is almost as good as Moeller, and that's a pretty good accolade to have. Obviously, Centerville, Olentangy, LaSalle, and Walnut Hills, I kind of have that block unchanged. Nothing out of the ordinary there for me so far. I thought about putting Hudson in. Hudson's one of my honorable mentions, I'd say. Obviously, Derby as well. Hudson had a sweep. I think they had a couple sweeps of a couple teams, but there were teams I have barely heard of. So I'm not reading too much into that. Just talking about St. Ignatius, though. Honestly, the reason I was so impressed with them against Hoban is because I thought they played like a top 5 team without their starting setter. But even if like their setter isn't coming back, I still think they're probably going to win the North. That's how confident I am, especially from what we saw with St. Ed's. I'd like to see how Hudson plays against some better competition, but I don't think St. Ed's is in it at all right now. So it's probably just Ignatius and Hudson that we're looking at for the North region.
I'd have to agree with you when it comes to the Northeast. Just a note there from my past D1 rankings. As we said earlier, we're doing this early in the week. Walnut Hills will host Moeller for their first game on March the 14th. If the Eagles can pull off that victory, I think they're moving up in the rankings for sure.
That would be chaos if they pull off that upset.
Definitely. I think if they lose, they may be on the way out. It depends on how they lose, though, because if they do what they did against St. X in the playoff game last year, where sure the first set was close, the last 2 sets not so much as they were swept at home, I think they're on the way out and put a team like Mount Vernon, who put Moeller to the test in their quad last weekend. I think put a team like the Yellow Jackets in place of the Eagles. So I think they're my one team that may change between now and Friday.
Didn't that playoff game last year, didn't their setter go down like 10 points in or something?
They did.
He did. That was pretty big. That was unfortunate. I kind of wanted to see I think that was right after our regional semifinal game we played. And then I turned on the broadcast with you on there and I was watching it. That was a shame. I wanted to see both teams at full strength. But obviously St. X came out of that one pretty convincingly. So yeah, some big matches this week. I would say for Moeller and Walnut Hills, if we both have a team at number 1, the Olentangy Berlin Twitter tweeted out the state rankings of teams that were coming to play on this week. And it got me thinking, like, we are the most official state rankings right now, technically, because there are no coaches polls. So if you're number 1 for OVT, you're number 1 in the state as far as I'm concerned. Looking over at D2, pretty similar in terms of the top 4. This is by popular request to add this. The only reason I was hesitant about it is there's not a whole lot out there for D2 right now. I think I'm pretty solid on my top 4. I like Hoban as well. Past that, it's more of what is my kind of feel for it, because I haven't seen matches from any of those 4 teams. Any of those 5 teams in the bottom 5. So that we'll get more information, I think, as the season goes on. But my top 5, I'm pretty confident in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. I did watch McNick's try at West Claremont. They beat West Claremont in 2 and then beat Lakota East in 3. Both matches were best of 3, just to preface. And then, of course, we watched Hoban lose to Iggy. I think the reason why I put Hoban lower than your ranking and why they're at number 8 right now is just because I think is the way how they finished that game is. I think despite it being close, especially in the second set where Hoban had a command for a good stretch of that second set before Iggy took it back to win it, I think you just can't finish off a set 25-7, and in my opinion, especially even if it's against a prime side against Ignatius, who could end up winning the state title in Division 1. And then, like I said, I think McNick's could be on the route to maybe have some type of competition in the Southwest. I think some other notable matchups too. Carroll will be playing Lakota East on Wednesday at Lakota East. So I think if Carroll is in that ranking, if they deserve to be in that top 4, then we're going to find our answer there on Wednesday. As I mentioned, McNick beat East in 3 sets. So that's kind of your benchmark for Carroll. They got a sweep. Otherwise, I think they're going down my rankings.
Yep, I'd agree with you there. I would say I know Baden's returning some guys, and DeSales is returning almost all their roster. So DeSales, I think, is the clear favorite right now. I was really impressed with St. Vincent St. Mary. Taking a set off Mount Vernon is not easy to do, especially at Mount Vernon. So that was good for them. Licking Heights is another team that I think probably could be better than people think they're going to be. They've got some guys who play club. I know there was a quad scrimmage. I think it might have been, I don't know what the 4th team was. It might have been Pick North, but it was New Albany, Olentangy, and Licking Heights. And Licking Heights beat New Albany and the other team, lost to Olentangy. So they could be a solid team for sure. We'll see how that plays out, how their matches goes. I know they play Mount Vernon twice this year. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. And then for the combined rankings, that is what it looks like. Yeah, again, I'm not as in tune with the D2 teams. Partially, it's because not a lot of them broadcast matches. It's tough to just look at set scores if you don't have some kind of frame of reference. So I think D1 we're both pretty solid on. We can make we have more information. So that's the only reason why D2 wasn't in the podcast last episode. But as the season goes on, we'll get more information, and become more confident in our rankings. But this is the starting point right here. Any final thoughts, Mihir?
Not really. I mean, it's just in the sense that now more teams are starting to play, and I think when we meet back next week, I think we're going to really see how this season's going to be shaping out and which teams will be more of contenders as for now in terms of winning those regional and state titles.
Yep. Only 2 days of matches so far, but we are going to have a lot to talk about next week. Well, we thank you so much for all your support in the first episode. It's been a blast just keeping up with everything. We're glad that it's useful to some people out there. But anyways, this has been Ohio VolleyTalk. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you next week.